Welcome back to Collab 365, broadcasting live from our sorcery office in Manchester, in the north of England. My name is Paul Gallagher. I work for an ISV called AxioWorks that's based in the UK. I'm joined by Christian Buckley, who I think I'm right in saying is at home in Seattle at the moment. Is that correct, Christian?
I am. I'm assuming that most of the audience is also here enjoying this from Seattle. Is that correct?
All over the world, yeah. You've been a regular with us at these live conferences with SPB and SP24. So I know you've done quite a few of the sort of presenting and anchoring job before as well for us.
I have. I'm excited to be back and participate. These are a lot of fun to do. I was anchoring yesterday afternoon, but it's good to be talking now and kind of diving into some content.
Well, it's great to have you here once more with us. Just before we get started, I just wanted to remind people we want to see your tweets and comments, and you please use the Collab365 hashtag, and we'll get those all on our wall. And also, just a reminder as well that we all the sessions will be available on demand after the conference is finished, and we'll also put the slides, etc., in the various session rooms. So, Chris, your session is 5 sure 100% adoption of Office 365.
Yes.
Sounds like a bold claim.
Yeah, very, very slight clickbait title there. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to this. To try something different in this session. I know quite often we'll up the Q&A at the end, but if you've got something you'd like to contribute, get involved in this session, please put that in the chat room, and I will see the attention of Christian as he delivers the session. I know he's going to be checking that chat room as well. So give that a go, and hopefully that's going to work out well and enhance the session even more. So without further ado, Christian, I'm going to hand over the controls to you. And yeah, there we go. Great. I can see your slides, and I'll just disappear into the background for now.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Paul, for that introduction. And yes, 5 ways to ensure 100% adoption of Office 365. So yeah, I know there's probably a couple of you that are thinking, okay, I've got to come check this out because there's no way you can have 100% adoption of everything within Office 365. And it's I think it's the other side of this as I start to go through the content, and it is more of a conversation around these items. But this is really my perspective on this, and I'll get into kind of what I'll cover. But is long history of doing kind of new product introduction and working with various technologies to introduce them to internal and external customers. And one of the approaches that I was trained on kind of in the late 1990s was working for a shared services organization at a very large telecom company, so Pacific Bell, based out of Northern California. But it was this approach to any new product introduction where we would go through and develop a go-to-market strategy. So I'm going to kind of take it from that approach. That's how I built this content. Before I get underway, for those that don't know me, if it'll forward, there we go. Like as Paul said, my name is Christian Buckley. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with a company called BZ. I'm a 4-time MVP. I was a SharePoint MVP and switched over to Office 365. I don't know if anybody saw the news that came out yesterday that Microsoft is actually changing the MVP program around. And what they're doing is they're kind of aligning SharePoint and Office 365 and Exchange and Skype for Business all kind of fall under a, Office Server and Services MVP category. So while I'm still a SharePoint and Office 365 MVP, we roll up under the actual designation. Some of you are thinking, I don't care. This doesn't involve me. I'm just talking, people. I'm also the co-host of Collab Talk on IT Unity. Oh, the point I was going to make, if you're interested in what's happening in the MVP, is I wrote an article out in IT Unity as well. Written a couple of SharePoint books, and actually wrote 3 books in the software configuration management space, if anybody's familiar with the old Rational ClearCase platform, but that was a long time ago. I do blog a lot out on buckleyplanet.com. I was at Microsoft for 3.5 years. I was part of the team, which was, it's called Microsoft Managed Services, which was the precursor to what is now Office 365. I do live in the Seattle area, and occasionally I do go out running, although the rain has started, and so I'll be doing the treadmill here later today. But running is my thing. My company, BZ, if you're not familiar with us, go take a look, but we develop social collaboration technologies that extend and enhance what SharePoint and Yammer and the rest of the Microsoft stack do. And yes, we work with Office 365 as well. But what are we talking about today? So going back to my points here. So that go-to-market strategy. I'll kind of explain what that means. And I'll be honest with folks, I don't have a lot of slides around a couple of these categories. They're more talking points. But I'll explain what I mean around go-to-market strategy, why I think that's important with any new product or platform introduction. We're going to focus on the features that will enhance adoption. So you have your strategy, focus on the features that will actually enhance adoption. So many times we get caught up in all of the latest bells and whistles of the latest technology without an idea of how those things are actually impacting adoption. So really the focus is, how do we get people to be more engaged, communicating more, make the platform, I'm not a big fan of the words, get it sticky, but really get people using it and making it the primary way through which that they're collaborating within the organization. Developing training and adoption strategies for keeping them engaged. So you've attracted them to this new shiny thing, but to keep them going, ongoing. And then tracking usage and activity to measure your success. And the last one, having the right feedback loops in place to make sure that as the business needs change, as the maturity of your organization, as they've started to use 365, but as their needs mature, that you're keeping up with it. So it's all about change management. So yes, the title of the session was a bit clickbaity. Yeah, it was, how do you get 100% adoption? And all of these things, I say, here's my 5 items. However, each one of these can be a session on its own. Going and developing just that go-to-market, that internal strategy for getting people to use it and to adhere to that strategy is a talk in and of itself. Focusing on the features and just doing a deep dive into features. This is a 100 level. We're going to scrape the surface of that. But for a lot of people, they want to focus on the technology and be excited, be enthusiastic about that. But you really do need to understand the application of that technology to be successful. All right. So to start things out, just some kind of an overview. And this is actually, I don't know if anybody was in my session in Utrecht, Netherlands a couple weeks back, but I gave a keynote and a couple of these slides will be familiar. But collaboration over the last 5 years, certainly over the last decade, have changed dramatically. When I got into knowledge management space, so in that working for that phone company in the late 1990s, and I was one of the things I was chartered to do and my team went and did, I was a project manager. We built out our intranet, and we built it out. There was a lot of HTML. We tried to make it as automated as possible, but the provisioning process was awful. We're constantly fighting the battles of people having access to the right tools and information within that system, where now things have moved very quickly towards the idea where you can go in, you set up the permissions based on roles, primarily based on roles, where people can go in and use the tools that they want, where they want to use those tools. It's just very different. And what have we learned even in the last 5 years. And where we're coming in the last 5 years, I always like to kind of set it up this way, that Gartner has their annual event around social and collaboration, and it was down in San Diego. It was about 3 years ago, where they came back and Microsoft was pushing kind of all cloud. And Gartner came back and said 35% of organizations who are on SharePoint, for example, assuming most people here are SharePoint people, not looking at the broader, just, all of the technologies necessarily. There's more focus on SharePoint, but said 35% of organizations that are using SharePoint will never move to the cloud. Only 15% said, yeah, we're going to be pure cloud. We're going to get rid of all of our on-premises. And that 50% of respondents were expecting to be, for the next 5 to 10 years, in hybrid SharePoint environments of both on-prem and cloud assets. And what's changed over the last couple of years is that percentage of organizations that have recognized that we're either going to move all of the cloud or most of our assets to the cloud, has that number that said never has shrunk from 35% down to probably under 20% now, but has really shrunk down. And a lot of that has to do just with the changes, the evolution that have happened out in the marketplace and people's expectations about technology. Now, I also have to give Microsoft props. Over the last couple of years, they have done a fantastic job at going and doing customer and partner evidence around the cloud to show that, and this is just one of those facts that I argue with customers and prospective customers around this that are concerned about moving to cloud platforms like Office 365, is that they're concerned about security. And if you go in and look at the certifications, if you look at the documentation that's been put in place, Microsoft has been pushing around making sure that people understand that they are meeting the standards, the various international protocols and standards to make Office 365 more secure than these companies are able to do on their own. Now, it's not perfect, and there's other issues with moving to the cloud. And I'm not going to get into this today, but there's performance issues. And Microsoft is working hard at making it so that no matter where you're accessing the cloud from around the world, that it's I'm trying to think of performant. That's the Microsoft word. It's actually a made-up word. I'm not sure if it's in the Urban Dictionary yet, but performant, to make sure that the system is fast and works. Now, I'm sure most of you didn't attend the Worldwide Partner Conference this year or last year. Last year, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, it was his first time in front of this partner stage, about 15,000, 20,000 partners that were there. And he talked about the transformation that's happening inside the products that Microsoft is building, as well as inside Microsoft itself, that is transforming collaboration, transforming productivity. And so that is a theme that you're seeing consistently out. And it's not just this empty, hey, we're going to change it for the sake of changing it. But Microsoft is going in and end-to-end changing the way that they're creating software and thinking about, and this is what you'll see with 365, thinking about that end-to-end user experience, focus around productivity. And so sometimes you're looking in and you might see that, Microsoft made a move. I don't understand it entirely. And I guarantee you that they've gone through the scenarios and thought, this is how people are going to be the most productive using this. Like, there was a piece of functionality linking these two capabilities, these two workloads, making Outlook and Yammer work better together, making OneDrive and SharePoint to work more seamlessly. There's a scenario that's there. So I think as you hear new announcements, new capabilities that are happening, you can't just look at it on the surface of, hey, I don't know if that's even going to be useful to me. You need to think of it in terms of overall productivity across the platform, because I guarantee you that's what Microsoft is thinking about, and that's the way that they're looking at. Now, one of the things that we've learned is that collaboration and social are synonymous. And what I mean by that is that when you talk about collaboration, this broader platform, and Office 365 helps organizations collaborate, which is true and yet at the same time completely meaningless. What does that actually mean? Well, the same could be true about social. They've become these platitudes where what does it actually mean? Well, my argument is that all collaboration is social, and when you're talking about social technologies, you're talking about collaboration, meaning that social tools, when we talk about them separately even 5 years ago, they would be the separate capabilities. Well, they're now these ubiquitous features that are integrated into every aspect of the technology that we use. We've also learned different teams gravitate towards different tools and technologies. Some teams are very Outlook-based, exchange-based, email-centric organizations. That's the way that they work. They prefer that. Others are very SharePoint heavy. They may have workflows and processes and forms that they have built into the way that they collaborate together, and that's fine. Others are very social, and I don't know how many of you are actively out there using Yammer inside your companies, not just for the external community participation, but some organizations are very social in nature. Others are heavy instant messaging users and will kind of go in between the other tools. And so even within a large company, you'll have different business units or teams that will gravitate towards those different approaches for collaboration. And Microsoft's philosophy there is we need to be able to support all those things. Now, this is part of your strategy, and you need to kind of understand the impacts of the decisions, whether you force people down one path or give them kind of broad choices over how teams collaborate. But that's part of what Office 365 is trying to do is that you can have that looser collaboration and have different teams that are within the same networks, within the same environment, able to communicate and collaborate together. However, really focusing in and making sure the teams are more productive at that smaller level. Also, what we've learned, the next generation of employees, they do expect it to be ubiquitous. This is that, I'm sure some of you have seen this image or this kind of image before, but concert goer. My first date with my wife was a Duran Duran concert in 1987 when we were teenagers. And you get to save a prayer, and everybody's holding up their Bic lighters, for the slow song, and so now you go into a concert and you see people glued to the glow of their cameras, of their phones, recording the concert. And I would argue actually missing the concert because they're staring at it through their cameras. But it's, the millennial generation is, used to communicating through these various technologies. It's not just a nice to have anymore. It's increasingly the way that people work is through these technologies. And collaboration is about finding the right fit. And I kind of made this point earlier that you can't expect to just make a decision at the top level and push it down to the organization, and for that decision to be successful. And it's also can't be something, in this day and age, it can't be something that your end users go and find on their own and just use without having IT and executive support. What we've learned over the last decade is that both initiatives, where it's top down, forcing things out, and bottom up, ignoring the security and the standards and all those things, both of those are a pathway to failure. So there needs to be this coming together to understand and finding the right fit for the cultural and the business alignment needs of an organization. Another thing that we've learned is that mobility is business critical. It's no longer a nice to have. Again, this comes back to whether it's millennials. I mean, it's not just millennials that we are increasingly, the data shows people are moving towards computing on their mobile devices. I mean, look at the Microsoft announcement this week where there's all the talk about the Surface Pro and Surface Pro 4 and the Surface Book. But it was also the phone announcements that were just developed, the two new platforms, and the fact that you can now run all of your Office apps and run and use your phone as a PC, plug a keyboard and monitor into it, project off of that. I know a few people that have been working that way for years. Michael Knoll, another SharePoint MVP, travels internationally extensively, almost entirely as he's on the road, uses his little device. And he's been doing that, I think, for a couple of years now. And so that's something I thought, how could I do that? I do all of these other things on my device. We're doing more and more. We're putting our data in the cloud. The device is less relevant. And so we want to be portable and flexible. And of course, I know there's still people that are lugging around giant backpacks with multiple laptops so they can do demos locally and not have to rely when you're in a remote location on a connection. But that's just the reality, is that most end users are moving to mobile devices. Other things that we've learned. I love this photo if you've not seen these iStock images. Employees are better at self-monitoring than we thought. Some of the thinking of the old way of thinking is that we have to really police the systems heavily, that we need to go have all of these other tools in place to monitor, restrict, and control. And look, there are plenty of us that are in regulated industries. There's standards that we have to apply to. We have auditing and compliance rules around there, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about writing those things off. But as far as collaboration and getting people to work together, the more controls that you put on a system, the less likely people are to use that system. So when you give people guidelines instead of hard and fast rules, this police state view of collaboration, but give people guidelines and then go and let them find the way flexibly, find the way that they best collaborate, then they are more likely going to adopt that technology. So we then need to try things, we need to iterate on those things, and then innovate. So it's never just about, hey, we built it, we pushed it out there, it'll go live, and then people will just adopt it. That doesn't work. It's something that you need to pilot, you need to try something, start smaller, whether you've already got 365 out there launched, built out, but then new features come across, or you have as you're monitoring, looking at, hey, we've tried a couple things, we're not really seeing the uptick in usage, we're going to try something else. But to go and pilot, iterate on those models, and then that's where you'll innovate. It's learning from how people actually use it. And there's some great examples of how Microsoft is using that. Of course, Power Social, that's within all of the collaboration technologies. It's across this, and we'll talk about some of what those are. It's not about the technology at all. It's really about focusing on the needs of the people, because overall, success of Office 365 is about the people. It's about that adoption, which is why we're here. It's about making sure that we're getting business value out of the platform, but we're also making sure that the technology fits the people's needs, the culture of our organization, how people are collaborating. And ultimately, you hear this kind of tagline from Microsoft, that the solutions that we provide, and Microsoft has this focus. They need to be intelligent, social, mobile, and ready to go, these solutions. And you need to adopt that mantra with your organization as well. So you need to be able to be ready for the various ways that people collaborate. And I just use with these screenshots. So here's might be your intranet. Here might be a specific community within that intranet. And then there's the mobile experience as people are accessing all those things. All right, and before I jump into and talk a little bit more about the go-to-market approach, so I am kind of monitoring the chat room on the side. And Paul, I can see we don't have any questions yet, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to, I'll kind of monitor. Paul will interrupt me as well. So I'd love to make this a little more interactive in the time that we have here. So can everyone, it's all good? Everyone see me, hear me all right? I know a few. Hey, Knut, I see you. All right, I'm jumping in now. I'll call out a few other people later. Developing the go-to-market approach. So what did I mean by this? I've got one slide to talk about go-to-market strategy here. What do I mean by go-to-market strategy? And I talk about this just briefly, but so great example for this. So working for a company, and this goes back to some of my technical marketing roots. So worked with a company where we deployed our new intranet, and we took this new product introduction strategy, took this route where we developed a strategy. We went and looked at, we didn't call them personas, but we really did that. We developed personas for our internal and so our employees. This is about a 120 person company, by the way, but enough that we went and we said, look, these are the types of users that we expect to see here. Gave them names, and then developed a plan. We had a rollout plan. We had the calendar dates for that. As part of that plan, we had our communications. Here's what we're going to communicate ongoing. Here's the pilot activities. We're going to take the feedback from that pilot activities and then go and branch that out to these 2 business units. This is our strategy. This 1, 2, 3 pilot, what we call our beachhead customers. And then we would go live with the broader, rolling the feedback from the pilot into the beachhead customers, rolling the feedback, the learning from the beachhead customers into that live strategy. When we built out what is now Office 365, so while I was at Microsoft, this was generally the approach that we had for our customers as well. When I joined Microsoft, we had one customer, Energizer. So it was managed by one of the leads on the project was Joel Olison, which you probably recognize that name. So Joel was one of my peers, as was Bill Bear, a good friend, Mike Watson, a number of folks that are still at Microsoft that are still participating. In fact, my general manager still runs that same organization, though it's evolved very much. But that we had this go-to-market strategy of where we piloted it out with one customer. We were then going out and looking for these beachhead customers to go and help evolve our thinking and our strategy based on the second-tier deployments, and then rolling out to the broader community. So that go-to-market strategy means that it's very prescribed, that it's planned activity, and as you've built into that communications as well as education. So we also looked at the right way to reach people through different formats. And so that's really why. I mean, this idea of treating it like a product, successful rollout of products. If you look at how consumer products are rolled out, I don't know if anybody has been to Hawaii. Hawaii is a zone that is used by various companies to test market products. They'll take that feedback back, and then you may or may not see it in a broader population around the world. And that is it's a great strategy then to go out, start small, learn from that, iterate, go back out, expand your footprint, learn from that, come back and roll out. Why do we do that? Why do we treat that like a product? Well, it covers all your bases. You learn what you've missed. You learn how the reactions, how to communicate out to the broader community. In marketing, you do a lot of this A/B testing. There's been a lot of talk about how Microsoft, using telemetry, Yammer did this. If you're playing the drinking game, yes, I just used the word telemetry. To cover your bases, to make sure that your plan is ready for that broader rollout, to be more prepared about all of those scenarios. Do you have all of those personas identified? Have you identified all the key business use cases? That is something that is critical as well, is because no matter how much planning you do on the rollout of any technology, inevitably somebody's going to come in and with a perspective, you'll be like, you know what? We completely missed that. And so you want to be able to adjust and go back and build that into your strategy. And a lot of that is about mitigating those risks, especially if you have change-resistant employees within your organization. The But in too many organizations, they go out and they just build it. They believe that, hey, we're going to deploy this thing. We'll give everyone access to the platform and they'll just start using it. And they just don't realize how even people that are familiar with using SharePoint for years, that the change over to Office 365 can be fairly dramatic. It's not about, the UI changes, although there are a lot of changes. And there's not 100% feature parity between them. There are some things that you can do on-prem which you can't do online. Now, certainly, most of the innovation that Microsoft is working on is happening online first. So you're actually seeing new features, new capabilities in the cloud before you get them on-prem. So that's just something to recognize. And then the point here is really just have a plan for that rollout. It's not just about the technology, but it's about focusing on your end users, your employees first, that user-centric perspective. And that's really the basis behind the go-to-market strategies. Ultimately, you go into a go-to-market strategy for any new product introduction with the idea that at the end result of that is that you have people that have adopted and are happy with the solution. And you're working backwards in your planning to put all those things together to ensure that you have that success. All right, number 2, so focusing on the right features. So I think, let me see if there's some questions here. I have some people that are been having some audio problems, so apologize. And answer the question, yes, the session's being recorded. You'll be able to get to the slides and everything afterwards. You'll be able to watch the session as well. It'll be out on YouTube. So how can we as a partner best advise and become a part of the adoption process of the customer? I said it really depends on if you're talking about like a consulting partner, how can you get involved with that? And a lot of it is you work with the customer is to lay out that strategy to make sure that they don't take shortcuts around the education, the training aspect. They're not taking shortcuts around the planning activities, because they'll say that, look, I don't want to spend my dollars on talking about training, talking about which they'll equate to being documentation, which is not the case. That's there's so much of this, the training that's online, access to the data. It's about having the plan to make sure that you're mitigating those risks. And I'll come back to this theme throughout. So that's what I would recommend as a partner, is to get them to slow down and understand what the plan is, what that go-to-market strategy is around the end user perspective, what each of the personas or the different employee types are, what their needs are, the primary workloads that they'll need to focus on, and then have that plan built into the schedule for that release. So it's never just a flip the switch, hey, Office 365 is on, therefore everyone must be 100% adopted, right? Because it's on and they have access. No, adoption is something that takes time. All right, so focusing on the right features. And I'm going to go through some things fairly quickly now. Is this what your end users want? Do they just want to go in there? No, they actually have other requirements. So they want to be able to access key systems anywhere in the world. They want to complete forms and initiate workflows. They want it to be as automated as possible. They want to use it from any device. So they want access to SharePoint wherever they might be working, and they need to be able to do it with one hand, because in the other hand, they're taking a selfie. Just a fact of life. All right, so Microsoft working on a number of different things, and I'm just going to go through the list really quick. You've got Yammer with the Office Graph, and we're going to talk about most of these things here. But the Delve and the boards capability and all the kind of the rich content creation experiences that we're seeing. The inline socials, this is where you start to see the ubiquitous nature of the social capabilities across the platform. All the next-gen portal, the quote-unquote experiences that are being developed. And again, it goes back to those intelligent, social, mobile, ready-to-go solutions. That is what next-gen portals are. Office 365 video, of course, was the first of those next-gen portal experiences. Groups is another experience. You have the announcement in the last week about the Office 365 Planner. And I've got a couple screenshots, and we'll talk about that in a second. Office 2016 has integration across a number of these areas now. And so even the focus of, and part of the excitement around the latest version of Office is how collaborative Office has become. It used to be with Microsoft products, I wouldn't say used to be, it's always been with Microsoft products that you have the most robust end-to-end experience when you have Office and Office 365 and each of these other platforms or solutions or services now. When you have kind of all of them, they'll work together. That's what Microsoft is famous for. One of the things that annoys me to no end about a lot of the competing platform, the Fruit product, I use an iPhone, so the Apple software, the app solutions, is that how few of them work together, how painful it can be to jump between workloads in a lot of the most popular apps there. But you've never really had that in the Microsoft experience. Things have worked fairly well together. Now with Office 365 and Office 2016, you're seeing even more of that. And of course, with Skype for Business and all of the other ways that we communicate. And it's really just about Microsoft is going and addressing our real-time, so that synchronous communication, collaboration, as well as the asynchronous. So being able to come in after the fact and see that people have made modifications to a document that I'm working on. Where are those changes? And then go and ask questions in real time to the team if they're still online, things like that. All right, so Office Graph, what that is, and for those, I'm sure you're being inundated with what all of these things are, but Office Graph, the simple way that I like to explain this is that it's the machine learning that's behind just about everything that you're going to be seeing coming out of Office 365. All the next-gen portal experiences heavily leverage what's happening with the Office Graph. And while it's not a product, it's not a feature that you necessarily go turn on and off. It's something that is a part of the fabric upon which Office 365 works. And what it does is it understands who you are. It understands your team and organizational relationships, so your network. And then it understands the body of work that everyone is doing, and then helps automate the machine learning aspect, making connections and suggestions based on those relationships and based on what you're searching for and what you ultimately go and find and use. It learns from that. If you enter in a search term into SharePoint Online, and of the results, you pick the fourth one down, Office Graph is looking at that and saying, why did Christian select that fourth item and not 1, 2, and 3? What can I learn about that? And then next time someone else in my organization goes and does the same search, that fourth, what was the fourth selection might be higher, might even be number 1 based on the activity within that network. So because I found that content useful, Office Graph learns and helps others that are going and looking for the same information to learn and see if that's also going to be the right answer for them. So as it learns, it gets smarter, the search results get better, but it also provides this contextual web across every artifact that's being created within the system, whether it's an artifact of a Yammer conversation that's happening over in a Yammer group, or is a team site series of documents that have been created, or a conversation that's happening via Outlook, or maybe around an Office 365 group, which is Outlook based. There's a conversation there. It can bring all of those things together and connect them through the Office Graph. I think I've talked about that piece enough. The product side of it is, of course, Delve Experience. Boards, which is these cards, or it's a way of organizing your content intelligently. I always like to illustrate rather than just talk at a high level. So here's an example of, so I've gone in and created a board around Microsoft partner materials. So as I'm going through, so the natural way that I work, I'm going through with my team, and there's a bunch of content that's within the system. I can go in and tag this content. Now, not to confuse people, this isn't like the managed metadata tags, and this is actually an open piece of feedback to Microsoft, that the fact that boards are not associated with managed metadata and your content types and all those kinds of things is a separate construct. But I always think of it kind of like a zip file. I want to add a bunch of things to this zip file, which I can go back to this one place. However, I've not moved any of this content. So these 3 items, which I've classified as Microsoft partner materials, might be in 3 different areas of Office 365, but I've pulled them together within this view so that I can interact with them. I can share them. I can, of course, view this. I can see who else has access to it. I can assign tasks. I can do all these kinds of things through this board experience. You also have, through the Delve experience, the richer profile. You have the new, like this is the new blog capability that is through that profile, to the Delve blog experience. This richer experience, interactive experience, all of which is leveraging the Office Graph.
Christian,
yes.
Brian Jones is asking, do you recommend a place where he can find out more about the Office Graph? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, look, Microsoft there's plenty of content that's out there, and certainly from the community, you'll probably get a better narrative. You'll get more of a business perspective. I always push people to go over to itunity.com. It's a great location. There's another fantastic location is the SharePoint-community.net. So the SharePoint community online has fantastic content, a lot of very active bloggers, and there's great content there. Of course, the other thing, I would be remiss if I didn't say that if you are not yet plugged into the Office 365 network over on Yammer, and it's yammer.com/IT Pro Network, because that's what it used to be called, is the IT Pro Network, and it's now the Office 365 network. But that's where you're going to get the most comprehensive list of links, which will push you out to external content, as well as questions and answers around Office Graph is out in that Yammer site.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. So groups. Groups is the newer capability. There's a lot of muscle that's being put behind groups by Microsoft. And I know in the interest of time, I'm going to move through some of this more quickly. But the idea here is that you go and create a group, which was initially built by the Outlook team. It is like on the email side of things, but you can have conversations. You have a shared calendar. You have shared tasks and activities that are built off of the groups. And so here is looking at the shared calendar for a group that I've created for the Bellevue office. The Bellevue team can all have access to all this content and tasks. Now, anyone in my company can still see, if they have the right permissions, the detail that's happening around this group activity, because we might be, just like the boards, might be drawing on content and activities that are happening across Office 365 that are not part of this group per se. It's more like a filtered view into things that are relevant to this group. But again, I can also have conversations and have activities and tasks and content which are exclusive to this group. You had Microsoft announced formerly Project Highlander, now Office 365 Planner, but this Project Management Lite capability, which will become part of, and so these are screenshots that were shared from the product team with their announcement. But you'll be able to go as part of your groups to actually, so here's an example of that kind of conversation that's happening within that threaded discussion around a specific group activity, and in this case, around marketing campaign. So it's a way that, some people might be participating via their phones, through an app, the group's app. They could be in their browser having this conversation directly around content that's relevant to this group. But it also enables some project management capability, the assignment of tasks, and then tracking of those activities. And so being able to go in and look at, hey, here's the things that have been assigned to me, when they are, where I am within my progress on those things. If for the overall group activity, here's a look at where the project is or that initiative is overall. So there's some great features that are coming. We're waiting for the preview of Planner. It's not out yet, and that it'll be available probably mid to late of the first half of the year, likely before Ignite happens in May. That's my prediction. Some of that inline social capability, so you're seeing that around the Office 365 video. You have integrated experience within like Dynamic CRM. So again, it's this idea that where social and collaboration work the best is when it is happening in context to your workloads, your artifacts. So it's less successful. And this is my kind of stealthy kind of knock on some ways that people use Yammer, is that it works best when it is part of or alongside the artifacts that you're working. So it is one of the things that you'll probably battle around adoption is that you'll have a conversation happening in one place, work activity happening in another. And so, and a great example of that is if your work is happening over in SharePoint, and yet all of the conversations around it are happening over in Yammer. Yes, it's just a tab away if you have everything integrated. A lot of people don't have that integrated yet. And so it's still this kind of separate, opens up a separate site. And the answer may not be because of security around that content to then drop that content in Yammer. Don't want to do that. Groups might be a better model. My point here is that you need to think about, and as you observe the way that people are actually using the technology, and you may need to adjust and provide guidance on how to be most effective with these tools. And it might be to help move people, nurture them over into one side or the other, and then show them the benefits of those. And then another one might be to integrate those things. If people are working predominantly over in the SharePoint side, to make sure that the Yammer newsfeed is embedded within that team site so that it is there more at the point of consumption rather than having them go over to another tab. Hopefully I don't confuse people with that. I feel like I've talked that idea to death. Yammer, of course, I don't think I need to talk about. Most people are familiar with what it is. It is still an excellent extranet solution, a way to collaborate and create those external communities. I know there's people inside Microsoft that always cringe when I just focus on that aspect of it, but I'm telling you how I use it. Groups, of course, is getting a lot of attention now, but it really is this idea that different teams work in different modalities, and ultimately Microsoft is working to make sure that it's a seamless experience across those things. There's a lot of work, a long way to go for those things to be seamless. But that's just something to think about, where your people are most comfortable and fitting those needs. Now, very quickly, I'm not going to spend any time on these, but some of the other options that kind of fit in, there's other things you probably heard about. I would recommend you go take a look at like Jeff Shuey's session from yesterday, where he goes through and talks about the Office web apps and kind of the maturity of those platforms. Tools like the Office Lens, which I'm using more and more for productivity, to capture things in real time and convert them over to the digital format and move that into my body of content. What I'll do is I'm seeing presentations, I'm seeing things live. I'll share that, capture those things. I'll share it up to my social interaction to SharePoint, is where I spend most of my day. And then collaborate with people around that content that I'm finding at it, whether it's an event or in a meeting, and go and capture those things. It's a fantastic tool. OneDrive, of course, is getting more and more pervasive. The news that they fixed the sync. Wow, they fixed OneDrive sync. So that's something to go out and be aware of and play with. But again, it is more and more. I will not send an attachment, but rather I will send a link, whether people are inside or outside of my organization. And I'm utilizing my OneDrive more and more. And if you use OneDrive, of course, Delve plugs right into that and surfaces that content up as well. OneNote, of course, I live and breathe inside of OneNote, and Microsoft has made it. This is a great example of that integration between SharePoint and SharePoint Online, Office 365, OneDrive, as well as for the people that are just like to work locally around these things, is that things like Office, it is fantastic now that I can go and create a meeting and include in my meeting a Skype for Business invite. So I'm not having to go out to a third-party tool to host a meeting. I can just do all of that right from within that meeting invite setup and create a single place where everyone can go in and build notes around a meeting or an initiative within OneNote and then point people back to that OneNote folder. It is fantastic. And it's one of those things where I go back to my time inside of Microsoft, and all I say is it's about freaking time that this stuff all works together, and beautifully it works together. They've made it very easy to go and share OneNote. So again, I think anybody that has, over the last couple of years, we had this conversation in Jeff's session yesterday, that have moved over to Evernote, there's a reason to come back. It works. It's fantastic. Office Mix is a great way to go in and kind of capture content and make it more consumable through video content. Sway is another way. I always like to say that Sway is a way of creating kind of a interactive ebook format of your content. And then docs.com is a great location that's free, where you can host your documents, your presentations, your slideware, your ebooks, your Sways, all of those things, and utilize those things for free that Microsoft hosts that's out there. And I know that with the time, I'm going to move a little bit faster on these things, but it really, that was the kind of the longest segment anyway. Keeping people engaged. You've enticed them with the new technology. This is really where the rubber meets the road. It's about that consistent experience, having that performant system, having fast access to that data available through any device, and making sure that it's scalable. So this is not something that you're having to worry about. Hey, we just added another 100 users. What do I have to think about from an infrastructure standpoint? You don't have to worry about that. But one of this, and this goes back to that planning idea. You're making user experience a priority, but how involved were your end users in the prioritization of how you piloted, how you went after those kind of beachhead customer organizations or scenarios, and how much were they involved in that process? Just as I said that the more controls you put on a system, the less likely people will use that system. The other truth that's out there is that the more that you involve end users in the design and deployment of a system, the more that likely that they will become advocates or evangelists for that solution and actually use that. So were they involved at every step? Did they provide detailed input? Were they somewhat involved? Were they rarely involved? Did they have zero input? And a lot of the success of 365 will depend on how much you involve people in it. So if you want to make it more engaging, get their involvement up front as you're thinking about how people are consuming this content, where they're going and visualizing this. Get their input in the layout of these experiences. Because I'll tell you right now, this is my personal experience, is that if people are accessing through a tablet, a smartphone, if they're accessing through Apple devices versus, yes, I did see the comment over there, but they're using these other tools that you are designing for those experiences and keeping those in mind and testing those scenarios. It is critical. It's not just Office 365. It's so easy just to say, I used my credit card, I went and swiped it, we signed everybody up, we're using it, we're good to go. No, there's still work that you need to do to understand whether these are meeting people's needs or not. Yeah, I know that there's not yet a seamless experience with people that are using Mac. Microsoft is working hard to make that a seamless experience, no matter what type of device, what OS that you're using that through. There's still a gap between Mac and PC, between PC and Android device as well. But that is something that Microsoft is specifically trying to do. But to keep people engaged, and this is my experience with doing deployments. In fact, I was doing a deployment, I built out a bunch of SharePoint environments my last team inside of Microsoft. And we had our plan. We had our go-to-market strategy around that. But then we had classroom training. We had online training that was made available for people that just couldn't seem to make a meeting, but let them go and consume on their own this content. So there's that self-directed as well as instructor-led. We had these brown bags. We just made it very casual where we might introduce a topic and then allow people to ask questions. We had various gamification tools. Some of these might not be these fancy technologies, might just be that we placed up on a whiteboard, a leaderboard of the people that have done the most posts, that have been the most active or spent the most time actively using the solution, and then creating like rewards and to just kind of put them up on our shoulders, say, hey, this person is doing exactly what we've intended and provided this feedback. Everyone, please look at this example. A lot of one-on-one discussions, a lot of mentoring that happens to make that successful. So this is what I mean by you can't just flip a switch, have it turned on, and people find it, make it useful. You have to nurture and educate people ongoing. That's the secret to engagement. Monitoring, measuring. I know I'm running out of time here. The analytics and telemetry around it. The analytics is what you're able to do. The telemetry is something Microsoft does behind the scenes. If you are hardcore and want to understand how people are using the platform, there are telemetry tools that are out there. That's that question I always ask customers. Are you actively monitoring and measuring how people are using the platform? Not many people are using the telemetry, and then very few of the people that even are doing the analytics and telemetry are taking that next step and trying to calculate what the ROI is of these solutions that they're developing. So some of the benefits: prove out the features, identify shortfalls, how the solutions that you've built out are performing. All of these things are benefits. Microsoft is getting better about these automated dashboards. You can go in and use Power BI capabilities to make some very robust slicing and dicing of data to understand how are people using these, which workloads are people using in a given week or month, to understand that people are spending more time in Outlook versus SharePoint versus Yammer. It can be very powerful as you're trying to gauge the success of your deployment. So just understand what you're measuring, what needs to be monitored. So this is why piloting and rolling out using that go-to-market strategy is so essential. I'm going to skip past the telemetry stuff. There's shots of what the telemetry dashboard looks like. Exciting stuff. Lots of content out on TechNet around that. And then some guidance on how to actually go in and utilize that, set that up. I'll let you follow up on the slides. Apologies there. Skip past this, get to the last one. And I'm going to skip past that, talk about each of those things. All right, last one, feedback loops. They're really about the change management. Here's my last slide. Change management is a hard thing. You need to understand what is the business need, and Office 365 is the service that we're providing. You need to identify those requirements, map your requirements to what the service can and can't do. So you know what those gaps are, make decisions around what you're going to deploy, to whom, how fast, where you're going to prioritize those beachhead customers and those pilots, make those decisions on what capability you're going to go live with, and then iterate as you get feedback from your team. It's all success ultimately is about that change management process. Some great tools that are out there. It's all within the slides. I am going to stick around here in the chat if there are more questions. I'll be here for the next 10, 15 minutes. So Paul, apologize for coming right to the top of the hour. But otherwise, folks, reach out to me, send me an email if you've got direct questions, and the slides will be made available.
Many thanks, Christian. A really great session and a lot to take away from that. Obviously, we kind of got to the top of the hour, but I can leave the session open. I've got to run to another to produce another session. But I'll leave it open if there are any more questions in the chat room. Either you can either answer them in there, or obviously, feel free to continue broadcasting. Again, many thanks for supporting the conference.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
and I'll see everybody in the chat.
Thanks. Bye now.
All right, bye.